was so used to it. Do you remember my John Bull printing set and those rubber pieces of type? Gutenberg's plan would only succeed if he could devise a system for mass-producing individual letters which could be set and reset in any order. He went to the Guild of Goldsmiths and found a man called Hans Dunn. Together, they made the crucial technical breakthrough which made Gutenberg's brilliant idea a practical proposition. I've asked Stan to help me make a piece of type, a single letter E, which I can use in our grand printing experiment. For the sake of authenticity, I want my letter to match the dimensions of the original font used in the Gutenberg Bible. First, we have to make a punch, a master copy of the letter we want to reproduce. After we've transferred its outline onto the tip of this steel bar, it has to be carved by hand using a file, a very sharp file. So, in order to do the full set of type that Gutenberg needed for his Bible, how much work is that?
Well, there are at least 270 characters, perhaps more. So, given a lot of holidays, I would imagine close to the better part of a year.
This is a smoke-proof, a way of checking that our punch is an accurate copy of the letter we want to replicate. It looks spot on. So here we have it. And carved green, shades of emery, rasp, shaped, hardened, tempered. And now that is the key that unlocks the technology that changes the world. Most high-end books in those days were written not on paper, but on something called vellum. And what was vellum made out of? It was made out of those little fellows, pretty brown, round-eyed calves. They yielded their skins just as they yielded the rest of themselves to veal chops, to the tails of the mighty. Gutenberg was determined that his Bible was to be nothing if not of the highest possible quality. Thought that he would print every Bible on the finest vellum. But either he or his business partners did some serious mathematical modelling, as it would now be called, and they quickly realised that actually only a few could be done in vellum. There are therefore a few Gutenberg Bibles extant in the world which are printed on vellum, but most are printed on paper. Yes, I've had my doubts about whether or not would be able to bring off construction of the printing press and the time we've given him, whether in fact there was enough known about printing and to be able to produce something that could actually work and come up with a reasonable facsimile of something that Gutenberg could have done. I have to say all my doubts have been cast aside by the brilliance of the work he's done, and all three of the experts through there looking like children would be excited to watch. They will call together. This is the real printing.
This is the Gutenberg machine.
Right, it's time to load the trace and see how it fits. That's not bad, actually. That's okay.
Right, here we go.
Goodness.
Wait for the creak.
Good luck, everybody.
Well, there's impression there, Michael.
That is extraordinary. Congratulations, everybody. The inking is superb. The alignment is fantastic.
There is your E, right?
And that E in particular stands out as being
It's the best one.
far and away. Gutenberg's technology spread across Europe like a benign virus. It gave new ideas a ticket to ride and kick-started the Renaissance. For the next 500 years, his method of printing was used to make books everywhere. His was the machine that made us.
So I know it's very hard to imagine why it was this hard to print a book, and now we have this printing at home, printers at home to print whatever paper you want, right? Back in the time, it was very hard. It wasn't even invented, this machine. So there were everywhere scribes or writers just to sit down in big rooms and write manually the books. So in this movie, it was mentioned what was the first printed book by Gutenberg when he invented the machine. What was the first book he printed? Anyone hear it? No? It was a Bible. That's called the Gutenberg Bible. You have to pay attention because this information will be found in any book in school. It's general knowledge. So the first printed book was called the Gutenberg Bible by Gutenberg himself, and it's in 2 volumes. And of course, you are invited to come to the Manuscript Museum to see one of these books. Also, he talked about the vellum, all these cows or something. Why was he talking about them? Yes, please.
From their skins.
Exactly. The very fine quality of paper, you may sit down, thank you. The very fine quality of something to write on was a vellum. The vellum is the leather of these animals, but it was very expensive to make 150 copies of the Bible over vellum. So he printed only a few, but the rest was on paper, ordinary paper. Okay? And ever since that date, which was in the year 1456, this is the 15th century, more than 500 years ago. Ever since that date, books were everywhere. Okay? So this was the story about the machine of Gutenberg. What we're going to see now is a simple presentation to talk about the paper and the printing in Egypt. When did Egypt know about printing? Okay? Everyone? Of course, if you have questions, let me know. Okay. So we'll start a quick journey from the manuscript to a printed book. Of course, we explained what does a manuscript mean. So these were the scribes. Originally in Europe, they were monks, the people who worked in churches, okay? Used to sit down and write manually religious books. And of course, in the Arab world was the same. But before the invention of paper, how did everyone write? Over stones, exactly, and bones as well, like we see in the temples, okay, in the ancient times. This was before the invention of paper. Then in Egypt, we know that papyrus grew in Egypt, and this was one of the first kind of paper to write on. I suppose everyone saw a papyrus before, no?
Yeah.
So we have here a scroll, a very, very ancient scroll. And here, a very delicate ancient papyrus scroll on which we see some writings in ancient Greek language. You can pass it through, but very gently, please. So this is one of the papyruses were written in Egypt. Just, no need to open it all, just a few parts. So this is a papyrus, a scroll of a papyrus, And also we have this papyrus in our museum, and you are also invited to come to see it. Notice the writing. This is the ancient Greek writing. Anyone has been to Cairo, of course, maybe you have visited museums or the pharaonic village or something, and maybe you saw how they used to make papyrus. And after the papyrus, or even meanwhile, they used to use the parchment. The parchment is also like the vellum. Simply the skin of sheep or goats, etc., prepared in a way to write on. But they were, as we said, expensive. Sometimes we saw some writings over scrolls like we see here in this papyrus, but also we see some codexes. Codexes are simply a choir. A choir is like chorus. Many choirs bind it together to form a codex. Mainly they were for religious use. Okay? Does anyone know who invented paper? No. Yes,
Chinese people.
Exactly. Chinese people invented the first paper ever. It was in the 2nd century AD. Okay? And the first Arabic paper was ever found in a city or a city called Samarkand. It's now called Uzbekistan. Okay? It was Arabic at the time. And these are the scribes, simply few pictures to show you the work of a scribe. You see a large room here where so many scribes simply sit down in rooms to write down Bibles or any other manuscripts. And this is the first printing press in the Arab world. It was in the year 1610. Okay? But it wasn't with Arabic letters. It was with Syriac script, Syriac letters, a very old type of language. But the first printing press in the Arab world with Arabic characters was in the year 1706. Okay, so it's very, very late because Gutenberg invented the machine in the 15th century, and this is the 18th century. Okay? What about Egypt? When Egypt knew about the printing press, it was with Napoleon, with the French expedition. He came along with a huge printing press with Arabic letters and Latin as well. But unfortunately, he took it back to France when the French expedition ended. So we had a printing press only from 1798 to 1801. Only. It wasn't until Muhammad Ali to bring another press. Okay, the Hula press. Okay? So this is the first printing press in Egypt. Yes,
I have
countries all together. So maybe it was an invasion.